The question of all questions in the no-code world. Should you use the Webflow stack or Bubble to build your no-code prototype? In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my 2 cents on the matter. Let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Connor. I make no-code tutorials on this channel and I basically help you get your online marketplace or directory up and running. So in today's video, I am going to be answering a question that I get probably 3 times a week, and that is, what is a better tool to use when you want to build a no-code prototype? Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier, or Bubble? So if you've been to my channel before, you'll know that I use Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier to run the Unicorn Factory, and I've also used that exact stack to build other no-code marketplaces or directories. But you will probably also know that there is another tool out there that is very popular amongst no-code builders, and that is Bubble. So I personally haven't used Bubble that much, but there are amazing websites that have been built with Bubble, and that causes confusions with people who are new to no-code when they are deciding what stack they should use. And the truth of the matter is, both of the tools are phenomenal, and both of them will allow you to build your prototype and take it pretty far. There are, however, certain instances where I think one tool is better than the other. And so in this video, I want to give you an objective overview of when I think Webflow is a better choice, when Bubble is a better choice, and why I am sticking to Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier for the Unicorn Factory. But before we get into it, one thing that would be fantastic is if you could let me know in the comments down below what stack you're currently using. And if you haven't decided yet, just let me know what you are currently leaning towards and why. I'll be super keen to hear what people's arguments are around using certain types of tools, because of course my opinion is just an opinion, and just hearing what everyone else has to say might change my mind about things. But first of all, let's start off with a high-level overview of what Bubble is and what the differences are between Bubble and Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. So Bubble is a no-code tool that you can use to build apps and websites without needing to know how to code. So similar to Webflow, they have a canvas where you can design your web page and make changes to different elements, for example, picking fonts. So similar in a lot of ways to Webflow. Now, the one thing that you can do inside of Bubble that you can't really do inside of Webflow is you can actually build pretty advanced workflows and logic. So for example, you can set conditions when a user is logged in. And really, in a nutshell, you have Zapier inside of their tool. You can also natively integrate things like Stripe or other plugins, which allows you to build some pretty advanced platforms inside of Bubble. So unfortunately, I can't use Bubble, so I can't give you a demo of how exactly the tool works, or at least I wouldn't be doing it justice. But just from looking at the Bubble showcase, you can see what amazing platforms have been built using Bubble. So in a nutshell, Bubble is basically the all-in-one tool where all of the tools that I usually use with Webflow, like Airtable, Zapier, and MemberStack, are just natively integrated into their platform, which means you can build some pretty advanced apps that with Webflow, otherwise you'd need to use other services. So given that you can do everything inside of Bubble, why would you even consider Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier as a stack to use? And the truth is, with every tool comes limitations, and with every limitation comes choices. And even though you can do a lot of these cool app-like things natively in Bubble, it comes at the expense of things that Webflow does a lot better. So one of those things is just the ability to design pixel perfect websites. Now, Webflow is primarily a design tool, or at least it started off like that, and the key target market that used it initially were designers. So everything that they have done has been to allow people to turn their designs that were in Figma or Sketch or whatever other tools were out there into pixel perfect websites. Bubble aside, there's literally no other tool out there right now that allows people who cannot code to design pixel perfect websites in the way that Webflow allows you to do it. Besides being able to drag and drop together elements inside of the canvas, you can also apply animations to your site that I don't actually know if other sites do. And the reason why you can do that inside of Webflow is because it's not a drag and drop tool where you can just randomly plop elements wherever you want on the website. It's a visual abstraction of what it is to write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that really means that if you can write it in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you are very likely to be able to build it in Webflow because it follows that exact coding language. And that means that there are significantly less limitations when it comes to designing a site inside of Webflow. So another massive differentiator that speaks for Webflow is because you are coding visually in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, the code that loads in the browser when someone visits your website is way less bloated when compared to all the other website building tools. And that will long-term lead to way better SEO because sites just load faster and Google just rewards page speed. And that is something that honestly scares me a bit about using Bubble. So there are 1,000 more arguments that can be made for Bubble and why it's better than Webflow or why Webflow is better than Bubble. But really what it comes down to at the end of the day, and this is really the key questions that you need to ask yourself, is what is your plan long-term for your no-code platform? So the way that I'd look at it is if the functionality and the features of the site are more important than anything else, then I would probably look into Bubble. Now you can do a lot of the stuff natively inside of Bubble. And I must also say, as someone who is a huge Airtable, Webflow, and Zapier advocate, is when you start using all these different tools to come together, then I think you will run into limitations one way or the other, or you'll run into certain little difficulties. With that being said, I haven't had immense problems with it, so I actually think it can scale up quite nicely. On the other hand, if you care more about the design of your site and you care more about the long-term growth of your platform, then I'll definitely think about using Webflow. Like I can already tell you that there are a lot of companies that are already building SaaS platforms or have run SaaS platforms that are switching their entire marketing site over to Webflow for that exact reason. You get way better SEO, you get a lot more freedom to design things, and again, it's something that you can do even if you don't code. Now I want to explore a very specific use case, and that is building no-code marketplaces or directories. And I think that there are arguments for when you should use Bubble and when you should use something like Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. Now, the reason why I use Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier is because that aligns a lot more with my business model and my business strategy. For me, one of the key pillars to making this platform work is having good SEO. And that is something that I will definitely prioritize over the back-end functionality that I can kind of spin together with Webflow and MemberStack. One thing that I do that is super important is I have the individual profiles public, which means that those pages will index very well. Not all marketplaces do it like that. Fiverr or Upwork, for example, don't publicly display every profile. So in that case, if you wanted to build something more like Upwork or Fiverr, then using something like Bubble makes more sense because that's where you need to put more emphasis on the back-end functionality. So one strategy to just like stop overthinking the whole situation and pick a tool is to just start off by building a landing page for your startup inside of Webflow. From there, you'll be able to see if you can get a feel for the tool. And then if you reach the point where you find that you must have certain features that you can't really easily build with Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier, then you can basically create a hybrid of the two, which is having the marketing side and parts of the front end inside of Webflow and using Bubble for all the back end and functionality. I personally feel like long-term there is no way around Webflow. If your startup gets up and running and you start getting traction, then you will eventually have to shift to Webflow if you want to make the most out of building great marketing websites that have good SEO. But I definitely agree that when you're in the prototyping stage, that Bubble might be a good fit just simply because of all the functionality that they have inside of their platform. In either instance, I think not picking a tool at all and constantly switching back and forth between them because you're trying to find the perfect tool is the worst thing that you can do, because no matter what tool you end up picking, both tools are going to come with limitations and you're just going to have to deal with it. In my mind, that is kind of part of the no-code spirit as well, is to work within the limitations of the tools that you have. So if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this video is to pick a tool and just start learning it. They both have significant learning curves, and by not just picking and committing to one, you're going to be stuck doing nothing, or you're going to be stuck having your idea in your head or on paper. And really, with these tools, you can get it live. So you may as well start now. So I hope this was a good review of when you should use Bubble, when you should use Webflow. I hope I didn't upset anyone over in the Bubble camp. But thank you very much for stopping by, watching the entire video, and I'll see you back for the next one.